Hello and welcome to this SQL course. In this series we will be covering a large variety data type to ingest and perform complex analysis. We will include functionalities such as PostgIS extensions to also ingest and analyze spatial data. We will also build SQL standalone functionalities and create connections with other applications to visualize data. We will be using PostgreSQL and PgAdmin. Welcome again, and let's get started. In front of us is a table of the data types, their name, their aliases, and the description. You can find this table at postgresql.org/docs/current/datatype.html. I will leave the link below. It does not include other data types such as geometry. Those will ship with the PostGIS. In the previous recording, which I will leave the link below, we showed how to install PostGIS and how to activate the functionalities. If you haven't done so, please go through that video, follow along, and get ready. Okay, let's start by writing our first SQL command. Conventionally, commands are written in uppercase and ended with a semicolon. So to create our first code, we're going to create a schema. And a schema is nothing but a subfolder that contains other tables. A table that contains other table. Don't worry too much about it right now. Things will make more sense later on as we go in the course. So let's type in create schema. It can be uppercase or lowercase. I like to take advantage of the syntactic sugar, and I'll do everything in lowercase. So create schema and then schema name. We're going to name it GIS. I'm going to run the query. And here I see that it returned successfully. And I go down here. I'm going to refresh. And now I see my schema here. I haven't had any tables in here because I haven't created any. But from now on, if I want to create a table, I'm going to choose this schema right here. And if I want to delete a schema, I'm going to use the drop command. Drop schema and then the schema name. I will not drop this schema, I'm going to keep it, but you use the same command if you want to delete a table. Drop table and then follow by the table name. Okay, next we'll see how to create tables. Okay, so the second one will be creating a table, right? So let's start by creating a table. So the command will be create table and then table name. Let's name it countries, if I can type. So create table countries. This is the name of our table. Now we're gonna assign columns names. So let's call it ID, and it's gonna be an integer. So we can type in integer or int, doesn't matter. So it's an alias for integer. So let's do ID. So it's the name, and then we gotta choose the data type. It's gonna be a varchar, and then we're gonna give it. So we can leave it without passing the parameter here for varchar, and it's gonna assign like a default. But if we are worried about memory and performance, and we know that the countries will not exceed a certain number of characters, then it's better if we pass in a number of characters. So let's do 50. So they have to be separated by a comma. So column name, data type, let's add a constraint here, and you can say not null. So basically this is the condition. It means we're gonna assign an ID, we have to do it, and this ID cannot be null. It means it can't be left blank. We have to put in something, so a value in there, and it has to be an integer. It cannot be a float, and it cannot be a text. So that's what the data type is, and that's the constraint. So comma, so ID name, and let's do ISO country code, and we do ISO 3, and it's gonna be a varchar. Varchar 3, and in fact here, okay, let's get back to this later. Comma, and then the fourth column will be the population. population. And population, it's gonna be in millions, so let's do big integer or big int. And let's add another column, so it's gonna be population. But instead of writing the whole number, like 3,900,000, we do 3.9 if the population say it's 300 million, it's 3,900,000. We don't write the whole number, we just do 3.9 million. So let's do it this way, just so we can use a float value here. Perfect. So we have our 4 columns here, and we're gonna run this query, and it returned successfully, means it created our table. And now let's do our first select statement. We're gonna cover this in much more depth in a later video, but for now we just want to see what we have created. So we're gonna do the select query. We'll cover this, don't worry. Select star means select every column in the table, and then from means from the table name, and we do countries. But this will not work because, actually it will work, because it's in public. We'll get to that point later. Okay, let's run this code. And wonderful, it has created our table successfully. Great. But notice that we created our table in this schema, in public schema, right? Countries. Click down again on columns, and you can see all the columns. So when you don't specify the schema name, it will by default create it in the public schema. But we want to create our table in the GIS schema, right? We want to keep some tables there in this schema. So let's do the next command. Let's comment this out. And our next command is, so we created the table, we created the schema, we're gonna drop a table. So drop table, and we don't need to specify schema because it is in the public schema. So countries, and this is how you drop a table. But we want to create our schema in this, and we want to create the table, the countries table, in this schema, in the GIS schema. So we have to specify the schema name, and this is what I mean, and comment it. All right, so create table. If you want to create a table in any other schema, you have to specify the schema. And the same thing if you want to query the table. So let's create it here. Perfect. Let's refresh. Let's come down here. And here is our table. With the columns we created. Right? If you want to query it, here you have to specify the schema. So the GIS dot countries. And we can see the schema of our table or the format of our table with no data because we haven't inserted any data, right? So we're done with this. Let's comment it out. Now let's insert data into our table. And the command is insert into, and then table name, and it's GIS, that's the schema. The table name is countries. Values, and then parentheses, and then we put in our values here. So we know that ID is an integer and it cannot be null, so we must insert a value there. So let's do ID1, comma. So this is a varchar, so it's going to be a string format, so single quotes. A name, let's start with the United States. Of America. Next will be the ISO country code for the United States, and it's USA, and it's varchar. variable characters. It's going to be a string format, and it's going to be USA. And then comma, and then next population is 331 million. So 900,000 people. 1, 2, 3, and then 900,000 and 331 million. Perfect. And it's 331 million.9. And we'll use this as a float, so we don't have to write the whole number. 33, because this is what we specified here. So let's write it as a float. 0.9. Right? So for the sake of better organizing our code, this is how I like to do it. So you can have them in multiple lines, and it shouldn't affect the way you write your code. So I'll do it this way, because it's gonna parse the whole thing and it starts from top to bottom. So it doesn't matter if it's one line or in multiple lines, right? So whatever format, it works just fine. So all in one line or in a separate line. And in fact, if this is like very super long, you can actually do it in, you do like a line break here, right? Because it's gonna parse this, right? And then it's gonna go to values next. It doesn't matter if it's here or down here. And then it's gonna read whatever is between parentheses, right? So it is extremely important to do it in the same order as we create a table, right? So ID, name, ISO3, population, and pop underscore. So when you insert your data, it has to be in the same order. So let's run this, and it returns successfully. And let's query our data actually to see what we have inserted. Let's do select star from, and then table name, schema.table name. And we want to run just this portion, just the select statement here. And wonderful. We obviously can insert more than one country. So let me comment this one out, and then let's add another country here. Let's give it ID 2, and let's add Canada, and it's gonna be CIN for the ISO country code, and the population is 38,250,000, so 38,250,000. So this is an integer, so we don't need this, and it's gonna be, okay, for the float value, it should be 38.25, right? And then let's do more than one country. So we did Canada, let's add another country. So this is the first value here, and let's do like another entry, like the first entry here, and let's do another entry, and it's going to be for country of Mexico. And we're gonna give it an ID of 3, and it's going to be Mexico for the country name. For the population for Mexico is 126,700,000. So 126,700,000 people, and it's gonna be 126.7 million. If you want to do it in the float number, you don't want to write the whole thing. So first set of parentheses for the first entry, comma, and then same thing for the second. And we can keep going for other countries. Let's run this portion here. And the query returns successfully. Now let's run the select statement. It's selected here, so it's gonna run just this portion here. Perfect. And now we have all our 3 countries in here. Okay, so let's add another country here. Let's do Guatemala, for instance. So let's delete these. But instead of following this order, I'm gonna pass in, instead of doing values here, so let's do it. So here I want to precise. I want to say like which countries which columns I want to populate for this new country, right? So I want to do like name, and I can do it in whichever order I want to do it. But then once I insert, I have to follow the order that's in here. Versus when we previously did, like, we didn't pass in these arguments here, but then we had to follow the default order, which is this one here. But here I can do it whichever order I want to do. I want to do name, population, and let's do an ID. All right, and we'll see what's going to happen. Let's see this. Then the values. Right, so we did name, so it's going to be Guatemala for this one here. Guatemala. And then the population for Guatemala is 17,110,000. So in population is a big integer, so 110,000 people, right? And ID will be ID number 4, right? So we have to follow the order here. So that's going to return successful. It means it's going to work just fine. But then once we query the data, look what's going to happen. So this way, and then GIS countries. Current trees. Let's just run the select statement here. Let's make this bigger. So we inserted the name, we inserted the population, but we did, and we inserted the ID. And sure enough, it did it it shows like exactly what we did, because those values follow the order here. ID is 4, this is the population value, and this is the country name. But whatever we didn't specify here, it assigned it a default of null. Null is in programming is a way to express nothingness. So since we did not specify here any values, it assigned a default of null. So let's do it for another country. Let's do El Salvador. So we're gonna do name, population, and we won't do ID. So here's going to be El Salvador. And the population is 6,314,000 people. 6,314,000. So let's guess what's going to happen here. It's going to return an error. And the reason is, because here when we created our table, we added a constraint, a condition. And that condition is this ID cannot be left null. It cannot take any a null value. So it has to have a value. So that's what the constraint comes into play. So let's give it another value here. Let's give it the ID value of 5. Now, let's run our code, our insert value. And, oh yeah, sorry. We had to add it here, ID, right? The order doesn't matter. Let's do ID at the beginning. Right? Then we have to move this one up here. ID of 5. And our insert should work just fine. Great. Now our El Salvador value is in there. We didn't specify the ISO3 code and the pop underscore value just because they're null because we didn't specify them here. But we can use other tools to alter those values here. So say now we wanna add those values. So we gotta alter our table and add those values, and we'll see how to do it.